Hello and welcome to Audio Log 7, Lucidity. I cannot recall today's date. I awoke with a cloth restricting my vision, but I had not been bound. The room smelled strongly of cigarettes, which meant Max sat nearby. I could hear the faint sizzle of him drawing smoke. He took a couple more brief drags before deciding to speak. I'm sure you figured out why you're blindfolded by now, right? It took me a moment to remember the vast amount of varying events that had occurred over the previous uncountable hours. But after my moment of something resembling vague amnesia, I had remembered exactly what had happened. I remembered venturing into the cave with the member of Mining Group W. I remembered his constant digging into his skin, and the red scratch marks present all throughout his body. I remembered the glowing worms that replaced his eyes, and the terrifying shifting of his body that left him as some deformed thing. The worms acted like some parasitic disease for both the body and the mind. Recalling the man made the scars in my left arm itch, as if the grotesque worms still swarmed through it. As much as I hoped that the worms who'd filled the luminescent cavern hadn't seeped out and spread to other members associated with the excavation, deep down, I knew more had been infected. I was terrified to return to the site. A woman's voice interrupted my paranoid and frantic train of thought. Don, you and I are both infected. The Queen tried to take you as a mindless acolyte, and though you were able to remove the worms from your body, she still has control over a fair share of your senses. Not only is she able to see through your eyes, but so is everyone who's been through the more intense phases of the worm's effects. She paused, drawing a shaking breath. I lost my eyes, Donovan. Max had to remove them before the worms spread to my brain, but I can still see. I can see through every infected person on the excavation site. I can see through your eyes. My brain had continued wandering after I'd obtained the main themes of her speech. At this point, I had enough evidence to involve the police. I could have Ellis put away, locked up for the rest of his life. However, this had become my own personal mission, and I'd be damned if Ellis were to die by anyone else's hands. Once again, my thoughts were interrupted, though this time by Max. I know we weren't able to keep you as in the loop as you would have liked, but we've been plotting. He took a moment to take another drag. We need you to continue being our man on the inside, since Jackie's out of commission. The Queen of Worms is watching you and leading you to something. He stopped talking, presumably to finish his cigarette, but Jackie picked up. Frankly, we don't fully know where any of this is going, but we need you to stay with the project. I saw what happened in the cave. That was just the start, Donovan. After they'd both finished preaching, I decided I would head back to the site. I left without sharing many words of my own. Arriving back to the site, there was an unplaceable thickness to the air, which made the whole place feel alien. The drab concrete complex loomed over the dig site, casting an intimidating shadow. I began directly for it, pushing open the heavy glass doors. The main floor was filled with people. A few carried notable signs of infection. They clawed into themselves, itching at their dormant parasites, who probably awaited the perfect moment to move into their eyes and take control of their complacent hosts. Most of those infected turned their heads to stare as soon as I entered. They glared through frail skin and weakened bodies. Entering the elevator, I had been greeted by the sight of a huddled worker in the corner. Her body twitched and shivered as she rhythmically beat her head against the wall. Under her breath, she mumbled. I didn't bother asking if she was alright. I knew she wasn't. I tolerated her for as long as it took to reach my floor, and entered my drab room. I grabbed one of the walkie-talkies from my bedside drawer, tuning it to the channel most of the site used to communicate. I sat back on the bed, eyeing a half-empty alcohol bottle. My eyes mindlessly drifted to the window, where they met with a stranger's. The man stood motionless, far below the room I found myself in. Though he was dressed in the clothes of a worker, his body was much more frail and thin than the others. He was an obvious imposter amongst the sheep, one of the many predators that surrounded me, which helped to develop my new outlook. Trust no one. Suspect everyone. The man pulled out his own walkie-talkie and spoke into it, pinging mine. "We're going to eat you, Don. There is no safety here. Our eyes are everywhere. You are our eyes." When he finished talking, he turned on his heels and followed one of the uninfected workers to an isolated site. I watched in complete horror through strained eyes. From what I could see, the thin, pale man's arms began to shift. The worms forced exits through his skin and swarmed onto the other worker's body. Almost immediately they headed for the man's face, and before I could think to do anything, another worker had been claimed to the Queen's disease-like hive mind. My walkie-talkie received another ping from the same man, and his giggling voice proposed a question. "Do you feel powerless, Dawn? Because you should. You should be terrified. We're going to envelop this place